seems fair to me.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook, our last for 2025. Can you believe it? But this edition has a lot of top topics. They're pretty hot, and we'll discuss those in just a moment. But first, let's meet the panelists, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese. Bill McClellan, who at the end of this year will have completed 38 years on 9PBS, one of our founders from January of 1987, and we welcome him. We have Joe Holleman from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and STLtoday.com, and from the St. Louis American, we say hello to Alvin Reid. And we're going to start with you, Joe, although a little nod to those who came out to the Schnucks Richmond Heights last Friday to raise some money for the Salvation Army, including the Brentwood Mayor, Dave Dimmitt, and incoming State Representative Reid, and from iHeartRadio, Roy Anderson, and a lot of great people. And we raised some money for the Salvation Army. It was a great time.
Yeah, I had a wonderful time. I've always wanted to do that. That was my first time ringing the bell for the Salvation Army bucket. So it's kind of cool.
Bill is really, though, the spirit of the bell ringers. You are the one, you go crazy with it every year, and we miss that energy. We did.
Well, and I have my grandkids out there throwing money in.
Yeah.
Joe, let me ask you about what's going on in the St. Louis County. Wesley Bell, the prosecuting attorney, who's got another week or so on the job because he's going to be our new congressperson for the 1st Congressional District in Washington, D.C. He filed to remove, once again, Dennis Hancock, a member of the St. Louis County Council, from his seat because for about a week or so in August, Mr. Hancock had hired a relative, Holly Galati, to act as an assistant, unaware, apparently, that state law prohibits that. So the prosecuting attorney has gone after Hancock for the second time. Is it clear that he's going to succeed?
There's not a lot clear about any of it, and there's a lot of moving parts. So they went to court to get him removed, and they wanted him removed without a hearing. And a judge said, no, we're going to have a hearing. Bell's office withdrew that move and now comes back with another move saying, okay, we want to try to remove him again. While that was happening, in that interim, Wesley Bell's office went to a grand jury to pursue an indictment against Diane Valente, the clerk to the county council. And she has since been charged with forgery, felony forgery, and several other misdemeanors in what they're saying was an attempt to defraud, but basically changing information in the county's computer system. And so we have this spending 2 hours and 2 attorneys worth of time to get a charge levied against a clerk, a staffer, which has gotten some people, if not up in arms, at least upset with Bell's office's behavior there. So now they're trying to go to see if there's another judge who will indeed remove Hancock from office. And they're all, both cases are kind of tied together. And the question that I keep hearing from the sources in the courthouse is everybody's wondering why Wesley Bell, who literally has like 8 days left, why he is pressing so hard on this case. And it is a nepotism case, but it's not as if Dennis Hancock's stepdaughter is the only relative employed in county government. So the question kind of begs is why so hard on this one?
One example is Kanika Cunningham, who's the health director, who hired her own daughter and gave her a pay raise, and there's no legal action for whatever reason against her.
Is what she did against the law?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
As Joe has reported.
But I'm just saying, like, this is by whatever he's supposed to leave because that's what the Constitution says.
Right.
I don't know what is going on in the county, the city, America, but it's, I mean, just kind of the way, I'm not saying you're like this, but how you phrased it, it's like, I just don't know why he's going after her money. And all she did was just get into the computer system and change some stuff. That's against the law. And A, she should be terminated, and B, if somebody filed charges against her, it's her own fault. So I don't understand.
And
Well, I think you always need judgment. And I think the rational judgment in this is that when Mr. Hancock said he didn't know it was against the law to hire his stepdaughter, and as soon as he found out it was, she withdrew. No harm, no foul. I don't see the point of going
after that, there was some falsifying
the
cover up.
Well, was it falsifying or was it updating?
It was
because Holly Galati sent a registered letter.
It was cover up.
It was a correction.
In my opinion.
It wasn't a cover-up because Mr. Hancock was introducing her to everybody in the office as a relative. So he obviously didn't know that he was breaking the law.
No, he obviously didn't care until he got busted.
I don't think there's any evidence that he didn't care. I think there's far more evidence that he didn't know. Now, I'm saying ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Not only
I'll give you that.
There's a tape recording that the prosecuting attorney released between Dana Redwing, who's the county counselor. She calls up Dennis Hancock, and it's clear as day in the recording, he has no idea that he stepped on any toes. And so a week later, she sends a registered letter to the county saying, I don't want to get paid. They pay her anyway after that, and she wants to walk away.
If this were, but I have to be, I have to try to be, maybe in the new year, to be consistent. Okay, if this had happened on Kim Gardner's watch, I would have the same attitude. The law is the law. Wesley Bell said that the minute that this came to light, and that he would be removed from office. And ignorance of the law is no excuse. And Miss Valenti, who looks like an absolutely lovely woman, when someone asked her to go into the computer system and change the information, this isn't a clothing store on North Gore. This is the county government center.
I think what's interesting, though, is especially when you look at the new view of prosecutors, it seemed to me that 4 or 6 years ago, people were hiring prosecutors saying, let's not just look at the letter of the law. Let's look at intent. Let's find diversion programs for people. Let's not write tickets for not having license plates or car insurance. Use your judgment. I think there's a school of thought here that the judgment is Dennis Hancock. When our reporter called to say he went, basically, yeah, I screwed up. I didn't know.
Right. And that's what he said. But I'm not saying, well, maybe I am saying it. But he said, so he said that. So you just believe that. I hope everybody who did something wrong says, I just didn't know.
I'm so overboard. The voters elected the guy, and it's so overboard to say this infraction, which didn't last long, he didn't know about, we're going to cancel the election and throw him out of office for that?
Okay, so if I steal $10, Alvin, man, that was bad, but I know. But if I steal $1,000, I should be fine.
That's an important point, Alvin, because the Governor Nixon tried to remove a sheriff back in the 1990s or early 2000s, and the Supreme Court ruled you could only do so if you can prove that the perpetrator did the deed willfully. And I don't know if you can prove that Dennis.
All right. Well, and anything goes.
But it's not anything goes.
What about Kanika Cunningham then? Why isn't she being removed?
I don't know. Now, you want to ask Wesley Bell that? Go ask Wesley Bell that.
Well, Chris King has said they're looking into
all right.
it.
But all this other stuff is like, it's not all that big a deal and whatnot. That's where we're at right now.
All right, I also think that the doubtful mind who's doubting Dennis Hancock looks at the fact that we have a Democrat county executive and a Democrat prosecutor going after a Republican councilman. Does that raise any questions in your mind?
So maybe that might be the impetus, but the law is the law. And if he had not done anything wrong, I don't think they would just show up one day and say,
I think what the
we're
judge
going to run
said,
you out of town.
And what the judge said was, let's have a hearing on it. That's called due process.
All right, well, yeah, and the due process has shown that there was some shenanigans going on by this clerk, and somebody needs to be held.
They haven't got to court. That's not due process. It's an allegation by a prosecutor.
All right.
Hey, I mean, the county executive himself,
he'll run for president.
Was working outside the confines of the county executive's office, and apparently that's against the charter.
Okay. He didn't go to council meeting.
But this is the state's constitution.
I mean, you're also, it's just like, why are we finding excuses for this person, and we can find no excuse for some people?
That's my question.
I think that was the exact question. I agree with that.
All right, that's next topic. As we exit 2024. Bill, it's great to have you back. And you've been covering law and order for a long time. I'm sure you remember in the 1990s when two gunmen went into the Lindell Bank and Trust across from the High Point Theater and shot and killed the security guard. Well, as it turns out, those two men are two of 40 federal inmates on death row, and they were 2 of 37 that the president commuted earlier this week. President Joe Biden said they will not face the death penalty, or at least someone in Biden's office determined that. We don't know if the president is really doing this kind of work. But these two guys who shot and killed a security guard in St. Louis in 1997 will now face life in prison without parole. I'm against the death penalty, so I have to support the president on this. How about you?
Well, I have become against the death penalty myself, but I do not support the president on this. I think that, first of all, we just had an election, and I think you have to look at the election. The people elected somebody who believes in the death penalty. But furthermore, I think if you're really against the death penalty on moral grounds, you have to commute all of the sentences. I mean, there were 40 people, and 3, the Boston Marathon killer, Dylan Roof, I think he was the synagogue shooter, and Robert Bowers, the AME church shooter. Those 3 still stand to have the death penalty imposed. If you really are against it, I think you commute everybody or you don't commute anybody. So I don't like the way this happened. It doesn't feel right to me.
It speaks to the power of the presidency, and Joe and I had the exact same thought when President Obama said elections have consequences. These are the types of consequences that they have. And there's either, joy unknown, untold, or there is sadness untold regarding this decision. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but I certainly, they're still in prison. They are still in prison. It's not like they're
at the beach.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a sad day for some, and as I said, jubilation for others.
It's ridiculous. I mean, the governor commuted the sentence of a police officer duly convicted of killing an innocent man in Kansas City, and he's home for Christmas. And 45 people on death row, or however many it was, are now not going to, face the death penalty. I don't care about the prosecutor in that town, wherever they did it. I don't care about the jury that actually had to come to this decision. I don't care about anybody. I'm going to let them out. On the day that President Trump gets sworn in, the 20th, and he lets all the criminals go that raided the Capitol, and then people are going to be mad at that. How are you going to be mad? This goes back to kind of what I was saying before. What has happened? It's like, it's Ali income free.
Yeah.
I don't like him, so I want him to pay or her to pay. I do like them, so I'm going to let them out. Like, what are attorneys saying? What are prosecutors really? I don't care what party you're in. It's got to feel like, why are we here? What are the police thinking?
Well, the current U.S. Attorney, Sailor Fleming, and a former U.S. Attorney, Ed Dowd, both agree with you.
All right,
I think Bill's point was well taken on it. If you are opposed to the death penalty, then do them all. Because, and I can understand where sentences are commuted, where there are questions. Maybe you've been convicted, you run through, but there's still a nagging question that, did they really do it, or what have you? But there was no question, especially one of the shooters at the Lindell Bank one. I believe the testimony showed not only did shoot the guard, went over to the guard as he was down on the ground and shot him while he was laying there. So the barbarity of the crime certainly is something that should have stood out. So the idea that you're going to let them go but not 3 others, just makes no sense. Either don't do any of them or do all of them. So I'm with Bill.
Yeah.
Hey, Alvin, let's move on to Kirkwood, Missouri.
Peaceful Kirkwood.
Yeah, for now anyway.
I know.
The garden spot.
Here's the thing about Kirkwood. It's one of the country's great cities. It's got the farmers market, it's got the train station, it's got the Performing Arts Center, and just beautiful architecture, along with Kirkwood Avenue with all sorts of shops. Really charming. But the St. Louis Business Journal had a pretty lengthy story taking a look at how developers are sending their proposals to City Hall. They want to build condominiums and apartments and hotels, and there's some resistance. The mayor of Kirkwood, Liz Gibbons, is quoted as saying, hey, we don't want to become Clayton with big buildings and no charm. and that kind of struck a chord. What's going to happen in Kirkwood? Is it going to go big or small?
Okay, first of all, I know all of these people involved, so I'll just put that out there. All right, but I do have
That's their problem.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But I do have an opinion on this. Growing up there, okay, and then, leaving, being gone like for 20 years, then moving back in the mid-'90s. Kirkwood that I moved back to was a lot like Kirkwood that I had left. There was a big to-do about, the Walmart getting built and, that thing, out there, and some condos were built shortly, not too much after that downtown. But then some other zoning and some other things got changed in a big apartment complex right downtown. And I think slowly but surely enough people in Kirkwood said, like, what are we going to be? And finally the discussion is really taking place, like, what are we going to be? I think right now it's centered on downtown Kirkwood, but I think that discussion is really being had in many households because every time a small house goes away, a mini mansion replaces it.
Yeah.
And I think we are pricing out young families. I think we are pricing out people that just kind of don't have a lot of money. And I think it's just a discussion that's worth having. And I guess other places are having it. I think done a pretty good job of it so far, but I think a lot of people in Kirkwood think it's already out of control.
Well, I certainly hope that that small Kirkwood prevails because it is one of the last bastions when you think of Main Street America. You immediately think of Kirkwood, and I agree with you about people being priced out, and that's the sad part of popularity and the fact that everybody, so many people that you talk to in the metro area, that's their dream to live in Kirkwood.
Webster Groves went through this a couple years ago. Remember
Yes.
this?
Yeah.
The Old Town Webster Groves. There was a developer that had big plans, and there were going to be condos and this and that, and the council or the people said no.
Yes.
Yep.
And I'd be remiss, you called it Kirkwood Avenue, so if I don't correct you and say Kirkwood Road.
Oh, appreciate that.
I'll hear about that.
If you're talking about Limburg, are you talking about Limburg?
Yeah.
No, I would say, beware of the condos and the apartments because, first of all, there's going to be a lot of real rich people who are going to get them.
That's right.
And they'll go there because Kirkwood's so walkable. You can walk to a great restaurant or bar.
gosh, yes.
But the problem is a lot of the rich who get the condos and the apartments also have homes in Michigan in the summer or Naples, Florida in the winter, and they're never around. And they don't really form a great community. And so it's kind of like the downside. I think Clayton has experienced that.
Clayton used to have a kind of a quaint, quirky downtown, and it's almost gone. I mean, you still have the Busy Bee.
But you don't have the skating rink. You don't have the farmer's market. You don't have a bookstore.
Or the
you don't have a
Shady Oak,
bakery.
or
the
the
movie
Shady
theater.
Oak.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Movie theater.
Well, and I think, it's just a fact that, the big money turns people's heads. And these developers come walking in with bags full of money and say, you'll get this, you'll get this, you'll get that. To me, the beauty for all the problems that having small municipalities cause, the one beauty of it is that they, of all people, the elected folks of Kirkwood, which I'm sure Alvin one day will be.
I think he already is.
We're doing predictions during last call.
I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself.
is.
But they should be in tune with what the people of Kirkwood want. So one would hope, like the folks in Webster, that the people of Kirkwood, small community, the representatives can react to what their people are telling them. The people that are there every day, not the folks living there 4 months a year, 6 months a year. The Kirkwood residents, and they'll listen to them as to what kind of Kirkwood they want. It's their decision.
Is that happening, Wendy, as we switch topics here in St. Louis, where in 2022, outside Ted Drew's tourist attraction, great place since 1927, we had 2 pedestrian fatalities because of traffic accidents on Chippewa outside Ted Drew's 2022. And there was all sorts of talk, hey, we're going to put up bollards and lighting and a signal and a crosswalk and security cameras. And this past weekend, a 19-year-old drove into a crowd. He said he was trying to avoid something in the road. That was not determined. 6 people were sent to the hospital. A 38-year-old off-duty police officer was in critical condition. Thank goodness he's home right now. But, where are the bollards? Where's the security camera?
The off-duty police officer who was on the windshield of the car, it was just horrifying. But one of the bystanders or one of the officials said that the accident was unavoidable, that the young man who panicked.
Police spokesman, yeah.
Yeah, the young man who panicked. And when you think about it, and I'm sorry, I'll get back to the question at hand, but when you think about it, having customers that close to the roadway might be something that does need to be re-examined, because maybe in 1967 or 1980 or what have you, it was a different world. People just don't drive that way now, that thoughtfully. But the traffic calming plan that Mayor Jones had in 2022 after the, 78 fatalities that we had in the city, didn't pan out. You read about shipping delays. That doesn't, what they need should be in the St. Louis City garage, you would think. So I don't think there's any excuse for the situation not having been remedied at this point.
It seems like there's lots of different voices, but none of them have dramatically said, like, I'm just going to do it. Now, I know that the family-owned business, it is not their responsibility. I would have some concrete, whatever you call those things, I'd put them out there myself, and the city would have to come take them away. I would just say, I'm just going to do it myself. They won't be out in traffic, but they'll be right there by the curb. So at least at least up to that point, you won't get run over if you're on the sidewalk. So I don't understand this, because we've been talking about this and people have been getting hit, and between the owners, between the city, between the neighborhood, between good-hearted people like Joe and Sarah who live in the city, it seems like this problem would have been fixed. I
remember talking to Ted's son-in-law, who runs the place now, about, I thought you were going to have a traffic light out here. And he was, said, well, it takes a while. You need approval of this, you need approval of that. And I thought, well, maybe you do, but in the Chicago I grew up in, if the mayor said, I'm going to fix this, we're going to have a stoplight out there, there would have been a stoplight, they would have been working the next day on it.
Yeah, I got to go with Bill on that. First of all, I don't think traffic is, the same amount of cars have been going down 66 there since 1967. Maybe we should start by doing a better job of enforcing speed limits. That might be something that could contribute to it. People are driving too fast. I don't think it's that people are standing too close to the sidewalk or too close to the road. They're on the sidewalk. You can't drive on sidewalks. That's never acceptable. But I agree with you. Something has to happen, and the alderman needs to scream bloody murder, pound their shoe on the table, buy those portable lights. You know what I'm talking about? Like when they have, take them up there, set them up there, and like Alvin said, city wants to get rid of them, go ahead, get rid of them. I'm putting them up there. I drove by there about 30 to 40 minutes before that accident happened that night. And I remember remarking to my sister, who I was driving home, boy, it's really dark here. And that was it. I didn't think about it. And then I find out when I get home that there was this accident there. But fix it. Just fix it. Don't tell me about I had to request lights through this department. Roll some portable lights out there. Stick some concrete barriers up there. Fix it. Just make it work.
Hey, finally, everyone knows that screens have caused some issues with kids, Bill McClellan, and now the Normandy schools have decided to eliminate phones in all schools, and including school property. Can't bring them and put them in a bag or anything. What do you think about this?
Well, I give Normandy School District a lot of credit. They had a shortage of teachers, and they went out and got some teachers from the Philippines. They're having a problem with phones, so they say, okay, we're going to not allow phones in. Whether or not it'll work, I don't know. I see kids, screenagers as they call them. Yeah. So I don't know if it'll work, but good for Normandy for trying something.
I would agree. I think every school district, they can, as far as things like that, set that policy. And if the parents aren't, and guardians and people responsible aren't really, really upset about it, then I don't think we should be.
But they were concerned at a meeting in front of the school board, which is on YouTube. You can take a look at it. They said, look, we like to know where our kids are and if they're doing okay, and we like to track them as they go to school and come back. And I can totally understand that.
But they would know that your phone, only thing that could happen was, yeah, my phone is still like wherever put it in a locker. You just can't have it on your person, right?
I don't think you're allowed to bring it to
You
school.
can't have it in the building.
All right.
Yeah.
You can have it.
Okay. Well then, all right.
So when you're traveling to school, it might be nice that your parents will say, oh, he's at XYZ Street, or they hear about something happening and the kid calls home and says, hey, I'm fine, no problem.
Well, I think I probably go along with Alvin when earlier was saying, you know, what has become of us?
Yeah.
It used to be when my folks dropped me off at my grade school, they didn't worry about what was going on. They knew exactly who was in charge of me.
And where I was at.
For 6.5 hours.
Right.
And so this idea of, well, I got to know my kid's okay. If you take your kid to a school and you're afraid that your kid's not okay at the school, that's a much bigger problem than a cell phone.
And I agree with Bill too. You know, good for Normandy. Good for Normandy, and I hope more people adopt.
And I hope it works.
I do too.
And then
I do
that
too.
way other school districts say it's not the end of the world.
But
if you
yeah,
do it.
Joe's right too. If you are afraid for your child during the school day, then maybe they are in the wrong place.
I don't think.
How will you be able to online shop in class without your phone? Hey, let's go to the old mailbag and see what people had to say about last week's program. Many countries in Europe require the use of suppressors in hunting and target shooting to reduce the noise affecting the area where the firearms are in use and to protect shooters from noise exposure. The use of suppressors in the commission of crime is so low, the stat isn't even quantifiable. That from Mike Staublin of Troy, Illinois. You can write us care of 9PBS, St. Louis, Missouri. Don't forget those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and on social media, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Call the 9 line, won't you? 314-512-9094. Leave a comment. Listen to us on your favorite podcast source and watch us on the 9PBS YouTube channel. We call it Last Call. It's our bonus, and this week we'll be talking about our 2025 predictions. So don't miss that one. That's, of course, on the 9PBS YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you there and next year.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.